Hello and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I am Michael Gracia, and my camera looks a little far down. Let me bring it up a bit. I have a really fun show tonight. I got a guy coming on who I've known for a while, and I'm going to share a story with him later, which I'm sure I told him before, and I'm sure I've told the audience, but I've never told it live with him. He's a fantastic writer. He has worked for Archie, DC, Marvel, Disney. He's done so many things, and he's got his own character, Blackjack. Let's bring on Alex Simmons.
Hey,
Alex.
hey,
How you
doing, Mike? How you doing?
Yeah, doing very good. And by the way, I forgot to mention you're an educator. You run Kids Comic-Con.
I try and keep myself busy. You know what I'm saying? No.
So, first of all, thank you for coming on tonight.
Oh, my pleasure.
Before we get into it, and I know I've shared this story with you in the past, but I've shared it on one time talking on here. With you, I don't know if you remember this story. When I was about 16 years old,
yeah, we used to hang out on the corner.
I went to a Comic-Con, and I brought my portfolio, and I had this one guy look at it who I was a big fan of, and he ripped me a new one. And you were sitting a couple of tables away, and you asked if you could see my portfolio. I said, "Nah, it's not very good." And you pushed a little bit, and I reluctantly showed you. And you told me, you said, "Listen, you're not on professional level, but this is the type of stuff you need to work on." And I did. And you told me something that always stuck with me, and I took into my educational career. You told me that some people see the potential and they want to knock you before they become competition. You become competition for them. And at that moment, when I realized, I didn't realize I was going into education at any point in my life, but I thought about that when I went into education, and I'm like, I'm just going to share everything I know. There's no reason not to help someone. And a couple of years later, I worked on stuff. I showed you my portfolio. I saw you again at a show. And you basically told me I was ready to submit to places, and I never wanted to work for Marvel or DC, but I started working for small press companies, and this was, by the time I was 18, 19 years old, I started working in the comics, all because of the confidence boost you gave me.
Jeez. Wow. Well, if you told me this story before, I didn't remember it.
Yeah.
And if you were 16 when I met you and I was already in this business, what does that say about my age?
It means you've had a long career. That is fantastic.
Well, yeah, I like the way you think. No, it's funny because there are, in any walk of life, you will find some people who, for whatever reason, enjoy stomping people. I don't get it. It's never made sense to me. But I particularly don't have any respect for anybody who does it to kids or young people. And I'd seen that happen at a few cons. I'd seen some celebrities do it, and I'd seen some guys who were just a notch above the people they were ranking on. And it was just a waste. To me, it wasn't about turning out the next crop of comic book artists. It was about looking at the effort and the work and the level of creativity that person placed in front of me, and sharing what knowledge I could that could help them go that next step. And that's what it's always been about. And some people just enjoy drawing or painting or composing for themselves.
Yeah.
And why shoot that down? So I'm glad that whatever I said served a good purpose.
Thank you. I to this day I still appreciate it. I just want to say hi to Joe Ryan, who's in the comments watching, who says, "I read his short bio, sounds right up my alley." And
hey, Joe.
Mike Wilkie, regular of the show as well. Good cartoonist, been on the show. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it. So, Alex, before we really get into the work that you're doing now, tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into writing comics, maybe even education. Like, how did all this start for you?
Completely by accident. No. I mean, I don't know how many people start out the story this way, but it all started for me when I was a kid. And there are a number of people I do know who, it was the same thing. You fall in love with something at a very young age, and maybe it's going to be a career move or not, but either way, you're passionate about it. I was passionate about storytelling. I used to, just voraciously devour cartoons on television. I read comic books like crazy. I had action figures, not dolls. I had action figures that I was constantly making up all these fantastic scenarios, whether I had 5 or 6 of them or only one. It's just, stories, 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 stories. And when I started drawing and painting, I used to just make up characters, or I draw and paint the characters I saw on television.
Yeah.
And just constantly the imagination was going. And I think to some degree it was a way of, whatever higher power or whatever you want to consider it, saying this is what you're here for. Because it never died down, and my curiosity just kept growing. I watched a lot of foreign films when I was young, very young. So instead I was watching detective stuff and cowboy westerns, things like, but I also watched foreign films, and I was curious about travel and other countries and other cultures. And my mom's was great because she was a single parent and taking care of me as best she could, but she never put me down for it. She never smacked down my ideas, my curiosity, my intrigue at things, my drawing, my craziness. And boy, I drove that lady bats. But she was, as long as I was a good person by certain standards, and I did my homework and stuff like that, she was very, very much the positive, encouraging type.
Yeah.
And so I didn't learn at an early age that I couldn't. I didn't learn that I couldn't tell stories. I didn't learn that I couldn't become such and such. And yes, as you get older, you start to face racism. And I grew up in the 60s, so went through the whole civil rights period. But as far as I was concerned, yeah, there are these problems, and what can I do about it? Or what can I do? What do I want to do? And yeah, I'll deal with this as it comes. And I had a lot of different types of friends. And again, the love of comics, the love of cartoons, the love of movies and action adventure was all organic. I kept exploring it. And finally, at 13 or 14, I had a couple of buddies. We did our own home movies, action movies. Yeah. And literally, I'm going to use their first names, Michael and Angelo, or Angel, made their own Batman and Robin costumes. They were great, by the way. They were fantastic costumes. I always got to play the villain, because you only got 3 people. You got Batman and Robin. You need a villain. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But we did home movies of this, and again, the stories. Most of the stories came from me. And so by 18, I had gone to an art and design high school here in New York City. I'd learned to, I'd studied drawing, advertising, illustration. I thought I was going to be an illustrator. I thought I was going to draw comics. But I also had this thing for performing. And so when I graduated, I was thinking about drawing anything, but then I sort of got seduced into theater, and then extra work in films. And then from that, I was writing, because again, it's this late 60s, early 70s. There were 2 types of films with Black people in it. So we're either watching films that dealt with slavery, like Sounder or something like that, or you had Across 110th Street, the angry black man or the militant, or that kind of, Shaft or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there was nothing in between. And yet I knew, people of color had these very, very vivid, diverse careers and lifestyles. So I started writing monologues and theater pieces for me to use as audition pieces. And then slowly but surely, I started to do more writing than performing. And then I wrote a Sherlock Holmes play, and I originally wrote it for me to perform in, but I suddenly realized I needed to really focus on it as a writer. And that was sort of the step over into more writing and less performing, and no drawing now, just writing. And so the play got produced. I started writing some children's books and things like that. I made connections in the comic industry before, but now I was actually applying and attempting to get work there. And because of some people I knew, I got a couple little assignments, and sort of grew out of that. So it all started with this kid, this nutty kid with a wild imagination and action figures.
That's great. I want to say hi to George Medina watching. George, thanks for tuning in. I think that's how it starts for a lot of us too. I mean, I had for myself, I had cartoons, comics, my toys. Actually, and I've said this on the show before. Last year, someone asked me what my favorite toy growing up was, and I said pencil and paper, because what I used to do was, and not that I didn't have a lot of toys, but my parents gave me a lot of toys that, but I used to draw out of the out of comics, newspaper comics, comic books, draw off the TV, and cut out the characters. And then I would build sets out of paper and cardboard and stuff. So I acted out all these little things just out of paper. So without a paper and pencil, that was my favorite.
Did you have siblings?
I had an older brother, younger. I still have them. Yeah, older brother, younger
That's
sister.
nice of you not to get rid of them. Yeah, it's really decent of you, fella.
Yeah.
No, see, I was the only child. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was, and I, again, right there with you, you make stuff up and you make things do. Yeah. And literally sometimes that was the magic.
Yeah.
It's just like suddenly everything was possible because you didn't have everything. Like I had some I had a GI Joe, I had a Captain Action, I had a Johnny West, a couple of other action figures, but I didn't have all the gadgets, all the costumes, and so you made stuff. Yeah. And that just meant, okay, push the imagination borders even farther out there. Mm-hmm. And what do you do? When you just don't seem to have any limit, it's everything's possible.
Exactly. Mike Lopez, our good friend there, is watching. So hey, Mike, thanks for tuning in.
Nice Father's Day shots, by the way, with you and the kid. Yeah.
What was I going to say? Oh, so okay. So around 18, you started doing more acting. Eventually, got into theater. When did you start writing comics? Like, if you want to go professionally, or even before you went into the pro.
The short story of that is I was, like I said, I was in high school of art and design from age basically 15, 16 to graduation. And so I was always illustrating and stuff like that. But in 1969, at a comic convention here in New York City, this is when Comic Cons were like at a hotel. I didn't need a big convention center, right?
Yeah.
I met this nut from Rhode Island. This really nutty, wild, wacky guy who became like one of my best friends on the planet. And it's Don McGregor.
Oh.
And McGregor and I wound up, we met while we were watching Jim Steranko do prestidigitation. So he's doing sleight of hand tricks to entertain a group of people that he'd pull together. And Don and I were, we were watching, but we were starting to talk. And suddenly it was just him and I talking, right?
Yeah.
But I started visiting him in Rhode Island because that's where he lived at the time. Mm-hmm. And eventually Don is a writer. That is his thing. Yes. That is what he was placed on this planet to do. Mm-hmm. So he had already conjured up Detectives Incorporated. He had something going in his head on that. And he had a couple of other stories. And so he wanted to, I think he was writing for Warren. He was doing some freelance work for Warren Publications, I believe. But he wanted to do a Detectives Incorporated story. So we had done one on film in Super 8. If you ever get to see that, you will laugh your off. But then, we wanted to really do the story that he had written. So I wound up illustrating it. And it's out there. You can find it with the vermilion Xerox cover and the black and white interior stapled together. There are copies out there. We've seen them, right?
Yeah.
But so it was from 1969 to 1970. I drew the first issue of Detectives Inc. And that was the first comic book format I'd ever drawn.
Wow.
And then we printed up a bunch of copies and took it to the 1970 Comic-Con, again, Phil Seuling's Comic-Con at the hotel. And we sold copies. And then I started to work on the second issue, and I forget what happened. It never took off. We never got to do any more of it. But that was officially the very first comic book I ever drew.
Oh.
Yeah. And again, what can I say? That, so then after that, there was, a period of about 2 years of me dabbling. And somewhere in there, I started writing plays. And then from that, trying to get some stories into Marvel, which didn't happen. But, I was talking with Doug Minch, Don, a couple other people. So that didn't take off. And then slowly but surely, the writing of the theater writing started to happen more. So I sort of put that comic book desire to the side until 1980. I'm thinking 82, 83. I could be wrong. I created Blackjack.
Okay.
All right, and the concept came to me, and I started writing it up. I didn't want to draw it, but I started writing a story. And Dick Giordano was at DC Comics at that time. He was a
Mhm.
VP at DC, and I'd known him through going to Comic Cons. So he
Yeah.
let me come up. He looked at the property. He liked it. Took me under his wing, mentored me on it for a while. For it was about, I don't know, maybe 5 months of rework. And the
Mhm.
funniest thing, the very first script I ever wrote has never been produced in all the stories that we've done.
Really?
Yeah, because Dick, I wrote the script. I was like really gung ho about it, and Dick said, "Oh, it's a really good script." He says, "Well, let me just ask you a question." I said, "Yeah, what?" You know, he said, so you got Blackjack as this globe-trotting adventurer, mercenary." I said, "Yeah, travels all over the world." I said, "Yeah." He says, "How come the very first story or adventure you wrote about him all takes place in New York City?" Oh, oh gosh. So back to the drawing board. And so
Yeah.
I wrote what eventually became Second Bite of the Cobra, which did get produced and sort of began that whole adventure series. But the story that I wrote, that first story, is still sitting somewhere in the files over here. And I've never done anything with it. And it just, it's such a simple little thing. Globetrotter never leaves the city. Why didn't I think of that?
I just want to go to the comments real quick.
Sure.
Juan Espinoza, who
Ah,
great guy, he was on the show promoting his book, his Kickstarter, which got funded.
the
Great.
systems admin. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Good stuff there. And he actually mentioned you in the interview about your book
I
that you
didn't do
wrote
it.
that inspired
Oh,
him. So we're going to talk about that in a bit. I also got George Medina doing it. He wanted to chime in about how creative we all were growing up with our toys. He goes, I used to make the headquarters and layers for my action figures out of styrofoam left over from TVs and other electronics my parents bought. That's great, man. I
yep,
mean,
yep.
you
That's
know,
it. Oh, and cardboard boxes, man. Give me an
yeah.
oversized cardboard box when I was a kid. Bat cave, spaceship, you name it. Yeah.
Yeah. I did oh, what was it? This was years ago when my wife and I were living somewhere else. She was on the phone, but we had all this cardboard, and I just started taking out a scissor and cutting shapes out and making little things. I made spaceships, I made a laser gun, I did all this stuff. All while she's on them, she's just watching me, looking at me like I'm this weird guy, and I'm just like,
And then she took you out for ice cream
yeah.
in a movie, right?
So, but yeah, I mean, it's still in me to do that type of stuff.
Of course.
So it's a blast. Let's quickly, before we get on to talking more in depth about Blackjack and some of the other things that you've done, let's talk a little bit about this. Oh, Joe Ryan, I love making backgrounds for my figures too. We all do it, man. We all did it. Let's talk about this book that Juan brought up. You wrote a book. I forget the title off the top of my head.
The Art of Making Comics.
That's correct. And I know I've skimmed it and looked at it at shows. When I've done shows with you, I know I've flipped through it. And it's very interesting book. I haven't had a chance to sit down and read it, mostly because I don't have a copy and need to get one day.
Hint. Yeah.
But this book, Juan told the story. He went to Kids Comic Con, which is another thing we'll talk about. He bought your book at the show. He read it, and within 1 year, he had his first Systems of an Admin book out.
Yeah, Adventures of a Systems Admin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I for years have you mentioned earlier that I'm an educator, so I'm what I guess you would comfortably call me a teaching artist. And so I've done workshops with kids for years. And one of them is creating comics. It's called The Art of Making Comics. That wasn't the name of my workshop. And you do them in after school programs and special camps at conventions, all this sort of thing. And it occurred to me that there at the time there weren't any books out that were for sort of an entry level mindset and that also encompassed the whole process. There were a number of books about how to pencil a comic book, how to how to ink one or do computer coloring, how to do manga, but not how to create a comic book.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, let me take the workshop. I'd already had a curriculum for that, and turn it into a book that people could buy, young people in particular could buy, and be able to do that. And again, it wasn't about, okay, this will turn out the next great crop of professionals. It was really meant for people who just enjoyed the concept or enjoyed the activity and maybe wanted some inside information on how to construct it. So it goes from idea, from first concept, to how to plot, how to outline, some basic, in terms of drawing, how to lay out things, thumbnail sketches, things like that. It has a lot of the terminologies that we use. And then it takes you through the steps of creating the comic book. And it even talks a little bit about distribution, production, and promotion. Yeah, so it's just a nice, encompassing overview with some details of the process.
Yeah.
And that's what Juan took, and he said, he read it because I've talked to him about it. He says he read it, and he had the idea for his own comic, and next thing I know, a year later, he's at Kids Comic Con selling his comic. It was amazing, and it's great to know, because again, someone like Juan benefited from the book in that respect, and I know other people who just enjoyed the book and are still just doing the comics and cartoons or comic strips for themselves.
Yep. And Joe Ryan asks, where can I find this book?
It's on Amazon. It's literally on Amazon under Art of Making Comics.
Very cool. Yeah. So you guys definitely check that out. And that book came out. When did you put that book out? I don't remember.
That's interesting because I should remember and I don't. It was, I think it was 2017.
Okay.
I think it was. And actually, if it wasn't 2017, it was 2016, but it was either 16 or 17 because it also got translated into Russian.
Really?
Yep. Because I was also traveling and doing lectures and creative writing workshops and things like that in comics and otherwise. In several different countries. I've gone to Africa, the Netherlands, and Russia, parts of Russia. And so one of the people that I worked with there said, we would really love to have this kind of book here. So I said, fine, let's get it translated. And we did. And I think we sold about 100 and some odd copies.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's definitely nice. So let's talk about a little bit about your, I do want to talk about Blackjack because
we got time.
Yeah, no, I know, but I do want to, because one of the things my show is about kind of helping promote, and I don't want to call you an indie guy, but Blackjack's kind of an indie creation.
It's exactly an indie creation. I wear that banner proudly.
Yeah, and that's great. I wear all my indie stuff proudly. But let's talk about the pro work you've done. You said you did a little work with Don drawing his comic, but when did you get your first story published in like, whether it's Marvel, whatever the company was?
It was if I remember correctly, it was DC Comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was DC. I started to say Eclipse, but no, I think DC happened first. I will always be a major fan of Joan Hilty. Who was an editor at DC Comic for a number of years, working on their Cartoon Network line, and some of those characters. And Joan hired me to do Scooby Doo, and that was a step in. That was the big step into the big dogs. They didn't bring me in to do Batman or Superman. They got me. Get in there and do Scooby, and I loved it. It was fun. It was fun for me. So I was doing Scooby, I was also doing Blackjack, and then another person that I will always have a piece of my heart is Amy Lago. Amy Lago was the senior editor at United Feature Syndication, comic strip syndication corporation, and one of her big crowning achievement was she was the main go-to editor for Charles Schulz.
I know.
Yeah,
I don't want to interrupt, but I had.
Well, then don't. Why are you?
I actually had her ex-husband Ray on the show, and he was telling me a bit about Schulz and seeing the Schulz and stuff. So but anyway, continue.
Well, so Amy and I met at a Comic-Con. I think it was a San Diego Comic-Con, or maybe it was here in New York. But either way, we met, and we got to talking. And then one day, she actually, offered me the opportunity to pitch for taking over the writing of the Tarzan comic strip.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow.
I pitched. I got it. I got the last. I think I got the last 2 years of the new material for
Really?
the Tarzan strip. So it was um, Gray Morrow did a
Hmm.
six-part Tarzan story with me, and then it was Eric Battle. And
Okay.
so Eric and I did a run on a straight Tarzan story, and then at lunch, I will never forget this. Eric and I are sitting there with Amy at lunch, and she says, "Do you think you could come up with a Tarzan story involving blackjack?" And I almost choked because I'm thinking, it's a cute joke. Don't do that to me. I'm trying to eat here, right? And she was dead serious, and I thought, there's that part of you that wants to go, "Oh, come on, don't." I mean, let's. But my brain went, hmm. Hmm. And sure enough, I did come up. So I got to do a 20-week storyline with a Tarzan Blackjack crossover,
That's
and I got
amazing.
to
I wasn't aware of your Tarzan history there, and I'm a big Tarzan fan.
see.
So
I've been around. I've been doing stuff, So yeah, I was Eric and I worked on that one too, and we would have continued with a story that was going to involve Jane in the next one. We were really excited about
Mhm.
taking her out of the background and bringing her forward, and then they stopped doing the new material and just went into straight repeats.
Yeah.
So that's where that ended. But
Wow.
at the same, so Scooby Doo, Tarzan, Blackjack was happening in there, and then because of Blackjack, Joe Ilyich, who was an associate editor at DC, talked with his boss, Denny O'Neil. And
Mhm.
the next thing I knew, I was getting a call in to pitch a storyline for the Batman universe.
Wow.
And they wanted to introduce a new black character in the Batman universe. And so I created Orpheus.
Mhm.
And I got to do a mini series called Batman Orpheus Rising. And
I
that was
remember reading that.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you remembered. I remember writing it. You know? And that was fun. I had a lot of fun working on that. I got to use a lot of the characters in the Batman universe. They kept the character around for about a year, and then they killed him off ignominiously. But I'm not going to make a big thing about that. I'll I don't want to talk about it. Yeah. But that was fun, and I got to do a 2-part Superman, which they never printed.
Oh, that
Uh,
sucks.
yeah, it did because they even got the first issue fully illustrated, and then they went nowhere with it. And I've always wondered why. I mean, they bought the scripts, and then they hired an artist to do the first storyline, and it did, and it involved and this is some years ago, so I'm hard pressed for the characters' names, but Lois Lane has a sister named Lucy. And
Mhm.
at the time, Lucy's sister had married young reporter at the Daily Planet who was
Okay.
black.
Mhm.
And this is before I had anything to do with the series now.
Mhm.
He and she got married, and she was visibly pregnant at the ceremony. So there's a shot, the last shot of the issue where they get married. It's the very last page.
Mhm.
A full page of Lucy and her husband Ron. Right, that's his name.
Okay. Yeah.
Coming out of the church, where she's got a belly in the white dress, white wedding gown. And okay, so I'm thinking when they gave me a shot at doing a story a year later, I wanted to do one about Ron. And there was something that had happened during the summer where they'd had this galactic conquest of Earth, and the Justice League had gotten trapped, all except for Batman. And there was this famous line where Superman's held a prisoner, and the aliens are saying, he says, "Do you have Batman yet?" And they said, "No, but we'll get him. He's just a mere human." And Superman goes, "No, he's the most dangerous one of all of us." So I'm thinking, cool. And then Ron's family had been taken prisoner by these aliens, and they had all kinds of stuff. So I'm thinking, oh, I know exactly what I want to do with this. So
Mhm.
I had Ron acting absolutely bonkers. He was taking all kinds of crazy risks covering stories. Intergang was tearing up the streets, and he's running into the fire just to get a stupid risk. And they're
Mhm.
all going, "What is wrong with you? What's been going on?" And what it turns out is that because he couldn't protect his family during that traumatic situation, he felt like maybe he wasn't a man. Like,
Yeah.
he felt, he was traumatized. He was, PTSD in that sort of scenario. So he was
Yeah.
now taking these foolish risks to prove that he had guts, and it was going to get him killed. And by the end of the first issue, it was a two-parter. It looks like it did, and
Mhm.
that's it. So there was one scene in there where Clark, Ron is in the hospital, and Clark is trying to talk to these teenagers that Ron's doing this program with because they were witness to the attack. And he's saying, "Look, Ron is my brother," and they said, "Oh yeah, you're going to go all kumbaya on us now. All men are brothers." He says, "No, my wife is his wife's sister. He's family. I want to know what happened to him." And there were people who went, "Superman's brother-in-law is black?" And I'm going, yeah, you guys did that a year ago. Yeah, I didn't do that. You guys did that."
Yeah.
What it was like this disassociation had happened where they'd seen Clark marry Lois. Oh yeah, and
Mhm.
this other girl named Lane married this guy. But I guess some people
Yeah.
hadn't seen them as a family.
Wow.
So this is the kind of stuff that I was having some time with. So I often wonder if that was, if it was just that they didn't like the story or they didn't like the story. I don't
I
know.
know. Yeah.
I never will.
And so you've mentioned Blackjack quite a bit.
Yes.
So Blackjack, you created how long ago? I forget the times.
1980s.
1980s. So
Yeah.
you've been doing stuff with him since the 80s, and it's a character you've never wanted to draw. So for those who don't know who Blackjack is, I know you kind of gave a little bit. Tell us a little bit about Blackjack and where his origins for you came from.
Okay, so the buzz line, the elevator pitch is the story about an African American soldier of fortune in the 1930s. And the bottom line is he's trying to establish himself in his own identity at a time when black people aren't supposed to have any identity at all. And it's really, it comes from a number of places. It comes from that kid I told you about before, that little guy that was okay. I grew up watching all these adventure films and these TV series, and I wanted to be, that kind of person, and saving lives and having great adventures and discovering lost treasures and all this kind of stuff. And consciously, for the first 13, 14 years of my life, it didn't register that I never saw black people doing that. It's just, oh, that's a cool thing. I want to do that too. Remember, I said my mom's never told me I couldn't.
Yeah.
So go through the civil rights period, and instead of learning, okay, they don't show us doing that because of, it became, they don't show us doing that, but we did. So maybe I should be.
Yeah.
And so that was percolating in my head for a number of years, and I had no particular outlet for it until the 80s when I was writing more. And then I said, the hell with it. I want to create a character who's black, who has these kind of adventures, and I want it for all audiences. How do I do that? And then I began to formulate the person, the character. As a writer, and I know you know this, yourself, the character is key. Understanding that character, knowing what he or she or it's about, what their goals are, where they come from, all that really makes up the heart of any story you're going to do.
Yeah.
So the more I got to know Blackjack, or as his name is, Aaron Day, the more I pieced together who he was, the more intriguing the character became to me, the more real he started to feel. So there was a lot of stuff about black men not being there for their families. Well, his father was. His mother and father were married. They had a strong bond, but his father became a mercenary because he had the opportunity to go over in World War I as a soldier, and over there was treated better. Not without racism, but was treated much better. And as many black men who became expatriates or who fought in other wars, especially in the late 1800s, early 1900s, to feel like a man, they equated that, and because it was an opportunity, they equated that with being able to fight, to stand, to prove I've got guts, that I'm not just put here to carry stuff for other folks and be looked down on. So many of them didn't come back to the United States. So I followed fact into fiction. and had his father be that kind of person who didn't want to come back to the United States to be a porter or a bellboy or whatever, but
Yeah.
he wasn't going to abandon his family. So he would take jobs, whatever kind of jobs he could, as a mercenary, and send money back to the family. Well, his wife's going, well, this is cool. You're sending us money back here and all that, but their kids don't know their father.
Yeah.
And this is not a family. So we're going to come and we're going to be wherever you are. Whenever battles you're in, we're going to be in a city or a town or a farm or someplace not that far away, so that whenever you finish, you can come home to us. And so that's what Sarah did. That's Aaron's mom. So young Aaron at like age 8 and his sister, who's a year older, Mary, wind up traveling with mom to foreign countries, meet up with dad, and then they followed him around. And so these kids grew up with a broader sense of the world than most black people at that time, and yet saw they saw diversity, but they also saw racism. They understood more of what was happening in the world. And yet Aaron wanted to be like his father. I want to be, this brave warrior kind of character that comes back.
Yeah.
But mom is also a strong personality, and she's also very religious, and and she's the one who reads. So she's teaching the kids to read, and she's teaching them about the different cultures they're in as best she can, and they're running off and exploring like kids will do. So at a certain point, Aaron has to, and I won't go into everything, but there's a point where the parents are killed, and Aaron and his sister have to make a decision about what they're going to do with their lives, and they're old enough to be on their own now. And Aaron wants to follow in his father's footsteps. And Mary, his sister, says, I love you. We're always going to be family, but I'm not going to sit and wait for you to come back from and maybe not return. So I'm going to get myself a nice little place in the country, and you can come visit and stay anytime. I'm your sister. I can kick your butt. It's all good. But if you're going to follow daddy's course, you're going to do that one on your own. And so Aaron, or Blackjack, is really trying to figure out in a lot of the stories where his father ends and where he begins and what he will and won't do for the money. And it's really about him figuring himself out and is establishing who he is. At the same time, he's establishing a reputation as a man, and in this case, a man of color who can take care of business and who also has dignity and intelligence.
Yeah, that sounds great. I have 2 questions after listening to all this.
Yes.
The first question is, why did you set it in the 1930s?
Again, it goes back to the historical thing. We, growing up in the 50s and 60s, I got to see movies from the 30s and 40s.
Okay.
Because TV was looking for content, and that's what it was. And people of color were just horribly represented or misrepresented. I mean, aside from us being omitted, black people being omitted, or only being butlers or slaves or whatever, 90% of any film with a Chinese lead character, the character was not played by a Chinese actor. So you got all those early Charlie Chan films were always played by white men in makeup. The buffoons in those films were either black or Chinese. The comedic relief was either black or Chinese. Any film where they went to the Middle East, again, 99% of the time, Frank D. Canova, great Italian actor playing an Indian, an East Indian, a Middle Easterner, whatever. But, again, no people of the actual race in respectable representation. And the history, the accomplishments of my people or other people like that misrepresented or obliterated completely. So to me, it was about going back to that high adventure period that I enjoyed, but this time trying to reflect it more honestly and trying to bring forth truths about not only my people, but other people of different cultures and hues, and saying, hey, we weren't all making Chinese food in a restaurant or doing somebody's laundry or shining boots or any of them. There were inventors and doctors and human beings who were living and dying for good and bad reasons, and damn it, you should know about that.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's I mean, listen, the story sounds great. Again, I've never read Blackjack. I've seen the covers at your tables. And
Okay, so wait, why am I
through
talking to you? You've
because
never read Art of
I'm
Making Comics. You never read Blackjack.
well, I'm
Michael, we got to
interested.
talk.
Well, I want to know more so I can go out and purchase the things I need here. What do
Oh,
I need in
okay.
my collection? I need a
Okay.
Blackjack now in my
Okay.
collection. And
Nice
Juan
maneuver, right? Okay.
and Juan even said he just finished reading today Blackjack and the Second Bite of the Cobra.
Yes, which was the very first published Blackjack story.
And this is my other question, and I don't know if it fits into your idea of Blackjack, but I always, when I'm listening to these stories, I get ideas myself.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that you're telling me how he grew up with his parents always traveling, I kind of get this little kid comedy Johnny Quest type of feel to him. Have you ever thought about doing something like that with the character, like his young adventures while his dad's off on the adventure?
Yeah. Well, I've done little vignettes within certain stories, like in Blood and Honor. There's a couple of tales of him in there, and again, we get flashbacks of situations he and his sister got into in their youth at different stages.
Okay.
And I recently, 2 years ago, wrote a series of short stories about his sister.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a wide range of storylines for this character that I've even done a legacy piece.
Mm-hmm.
So what his descendants are current day or up to. Yeah, it's a whole universe. It's a whole universe. And it's really a matter of creating the platforms or finding the platforms. Like, to talk about it on the show now, Blackjack's been optioned repeatedly by different people out in La La Land, and has always been a challenge. Like, for some reason, it gets but so far and then stops. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter who it is. So, I mean, Jerry Bruckheimer, Mike Newell, was it Spike Lee at one point? There was even a time when Wesley Snipes production company was thinking, there's always some hiccup at the last moment. And, I have personally, I feel that it's because he's not superheroed, superpowered in spandex or whatever, that's possibly one reason why. But when you think of how many people are interested in the concept, or interested in the story, or want to do the project, and there's always one little step that just can't quite get crossed, it does make me wonder, and I'm not giving up on it. It's not happening. I'll keep writing the stories and putting them out myself. And again, in the very early days of producing this series, people were saying, oh, well, it's only going to appeal to Black people in Watts and Harlem, maybe New Orleans. It's not going to have a very wide market. And then we started putting out the individual comics, and we were getting fan mail from parts of Europe, Mexico, the Netherlands. And I'm saying, where are the brothers hanging out in Copenhagen? Really. I mean, because obviously there must be that neighborhood, since you're telling me the only appeal it's got is with Black people. You tell a good story, which I've always tried to do. You tell certain tales that have a universal connection, and you find your audience. And after that, it's just about doing the best job you can. And as Chris Ryan, a friend of mine and fellow writer, like to say, you serve the story. You serve it to the best of your ability, and let it stand for itself. So I will, as I say, continue to do the stories, and I will always hope that we can raise to another level and get an even bigger audience. But either way, I'll keep doing it.
That's great. Well, I look forward to getting a copy of the book, even the first one. I love, first of all, I love that era of storytelling. I'm a big fan of like pulp stories. I love characters like the Phantom, and
I'm a Shadow man myself.
I love the Shadow, the Spider,
the
Black
Spider,
Bat, any of those like old time pulpy type of stuff, going through the 30s and 40s and things. Those are the type of stories I love. I'm a big public domain fan. So, and a lot of those kind of have that feel to it. So, I love it. It sounds like it'll be a fun book to read for me.
Well, you let me know. And hopefully you'll enjoy it.
I'm hoping. I got to get a copy next time I see you at a show. It does sound like a really, really good story. and unfortunately Hollywood is a screwy place, and I hope it works out, because I will say this. I mean, you know this, when you leave America, comics are looked at completely different.
Yep.
It's a whole, it's like a puppeteer, and puppeteers are revered in certain areas, and you come to America, oh, you're just a puppeteer, you play with dolls.
Yeah.
When you draw comics here, it's, oh, you draw Superman, it's all the same stuff. But you go over into Europe, and there's, you take something. I always go to like Peo, who did the Smurfs.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody read it, and they were just adventure stories. Whether it was Johan and Pee Wee there, or Benny Breakiron, or Lucky Luke, or whoever it was, they were just adventure stories.
I'm right now
Tintin.
doing, I love Tintin, and I discovered Tintin when I was in junior high school. I discovered the animated series first, then I found the books.
That was the same way.
Yeah, and then I'm right now writing the afterwards for several volumes of the Asterix series that Paper Cuts is doing, right?
Yeah.
So I just Tintin, Asterix, Smurfs, like you said, Lucky Luke. There were about 2 or 3 other series from Europe that I was into, and then there's certain characters. I mean, when I was a kid, Astro Boy, Marine Boy, Simba the White Lion, Speed Racer, Gigantor, Eighth Man. These were 6 animated shows that were on local television that we didn't know they were from Japan.
Yeah.
It was, the word anime never came up. I just wondered why I couldn't read any of the signs on any of the buildings or things. I'm thinking, what is wrong with me?
Yeah.
But it is good character, good story is just that.
Yeah.
And people find these niches sometimes, and then sometimes they blow up and they become like Pokemon. They become like an infection that spreads across the planet. A positive infection.
Yeah. Yeah, because we did have one that just kind of it wasn't so positive.
No, it wasn't good at all. No fun at all.
No, not at all. So let's talk a little bit about your educational background. So you've been like you called yourself a teaching artist. I consider myself a teaching artist as well, even though I've had like full-time teaching gigs and things. I'm a teaching artist. You've done workshops, and you've even put together Kids Comic-Con, and it's been a traveling show. It has its own location in the Bronx. Tell us how Kids Comic-Con started, how long you've been doing it, and what are the currents, if you can talk about that.
Well, okay, so Kids Comic-Con, this was its 15th year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And 2020 and 2021 were virtual Comic-Cons. But prior to that, we'd done 13 years of on-site comic conventions, mainly on the campus of Bronx Community College, where we've had anywhere from 800 to 1,000 people come to this one-day little event tucked away in the Bronx. One year we had to do it in another location. It was much smaller, so then we only got 500 people at this little church, also in the Bronx. But it's a family event, and it's a comic convention that actually came in existence because, as we've talked about, comics, they're a great escape for kids, especially pre-video games and things. I'm not knocking video games. I'm just saying, pre all that, we had cartoon shows and we had comics, and those are our getaways. We could just escape into the world of science fiction or fantasy or superheroes or whatever. And what happened is, in the 80s, more or less, comics started to become far more adult oriented. And I mean, the stories were more complex, and then after that, more violent and more sexual content and more vulgarity. And it was just really saying, kids, you don't matter anymore. And I knew that a lot of kids not only enjoyed this as an entertainment medium, but also it was their way. A lot of people learned to read or developed a love of reading from comics. Yeah. So as this material and this industry was ignoring them, the kids were being pushed into a corner. So I started approaching some of the Comic Cons I went to and said, look, couldn't we have a little section, just a few booths off to the side where it could be just for family and kids? And they basically sort of laughed at me and everything. And then it got worse when, I don't know if you remember this, there was a point in the 80s where a lot of, shall we say, burlesque dancers You know,
I wasn't. Well, I'll say this: I didn't go to cons until the '90s, but they were still
they were still there.
They were still there. Yes.
Yes, yes. So there was a lot of ladies who looked very wonderful without a lot of clothing on, and knew this, and had produced their own comic book adventures of themselves in rather explicit scenarios, and they would set up their stands and their tables right next to, I mean, literally, I saw Felix the Cat, Scooby, and a lot of the other stuff, and I'm going, okay, now, guys, come on, can't we have a section for either one or the other? So finally, Chicago Con let me do a kids' corner one year, and Kurt Busiek and a number of notable writers and illustrators did special workshops for kids and things like that, and it went really well. But it didn't make the con any money, so they said, no, we're going to rent this space out for them. And so it was a while before ECBAC, which is the East Coast Black Age of Comics Convention, said, hey, come do that with us. And that was, I think, maybe their 5th year in Philadelphia. So we went and did it there, and they kept it going. Every year they've had a component for kids. And then in 2006 or 2007, a gentleman by the name of Eugene Adams, who was the director of educational outreach at Bronx Community College, found a book that I had written, I think it was a middle grade book I had written about kids in karate. And he got in touch with me because he was doing a program around that. And then he got to talking to me, and he says, well, what else do you do? And I said, well, I do workshops and things with kids on comics. He said, oh, well, come do some workshops at the schools that we're connected to. I said, okay, fine. Then he said, well, what else do you do? I said, well, I'd love to do a panel to show college students that this is an industry, this is a business, and there are people at different levels making a living doing this. He says, okay, how do we do that? So we put this panel together, and the college thought, oh, you're only going to have like maybe 20 people there. So they gave us a conference room. Well, the word went out. We had over 200 people jammed into this conference room with 6 independent artists, including Eric Battle and Stephen Harris, and I forget a couple of others. They're talking about how they do what they do in this industry. Then we had teachers standing room only, because they saw all these students there. And so that was a big success. And then he said, well, what else do you want to do? And I said, you haven't learned not to ask me that. And so I said, well, I really kind of would like to do a Comic-Con for family and kids to show the bigger cons that this is a viable entity. Okay, how do we do that? So we put it together. And again, I'm thinking I'll get 10 of my friends in the industry, and we'll maybe get like 50 people from the underserved neighborhood that's around the college. And, it'll be a small thing, but at least it'll be some proof of intent.
Yeah.
Well, this is, God bless the internet, because I think it was Calvin Reed of Publishers Weekly, and a couple of other people who did internet zines heard about it, wrote about it, and within 2 weeks of the event, I had 45 publishers and artists signed up for tables at the event. And then when we opened the doors, we had over 800 people storm into the college for this event, including 2 librarians who flew in from Chicago for the day.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's great, though.
And then there was a gentleman who worked for Reed Expo at that time, because I think they'd had their first Comic-Con the year before. And he was there. He turned out to be, and he said, this is what our kids' day at the New York Comic-Con should be.
Yeah.
So I got pulled in with 5 other people to be advisors to their Kids' Day event for like 2 years after that. But we've been doing the Kids Comic-Con every year since.
That's fantastic.
And again, it goes back to that mindset about it's not can I do it, it's how can I do it.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, you've done so much already, like with tons of ideas, making them come true here. I mean, that's a lot of hard work. So, something you should be very proud of, everything you've accomplished.
Thank you.
There's some other questions I want to ask, but before I get to that, when you were when we were backstage chatting a few minutes, and I don't want to forget this. You made a comment about my Lord of the Rings poster. You said you wanted to ask me a question, so I want to get to the question. I almost
Okay.
forgot until I saw it in my.
In your rear view. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things I do currently and have for about 5 years is I'm a freelance teacher of screenwriting at the New York Film Academy. And for 5 years now, I've taught screenwriting and storytelling to students from all over the world and at various age groups. And one of my favorite examples of the power of characters and how you can develop the core of a character, how you can show the core of a character through certain simple things, is a scene from the first Lord of the Rings movie.
Okay.
So let's see here. There's a scene at the end of the movie, right towards the end of the movie, between Frodo and Sam. So the first thing I'm going to say is, if you know the movie, where were they towards the end of the film of the first movie?
Are you going to the ending where they're in the boat?
Yep. Okay, so it starts out with them on the shore, right?
Yes.
And what does Frodo do?
Frodo leaves.
Yep.
Everyone, and Sam goes after him.
Right, and Sam goes after him by walking into the river
that he
as
can't
Frodo
swim.
is drifting away. See, and you take the punchline away without ever the build-up.
Sorry.
Yes, right. He continues walking in, and Frodo's going, "Go back, Sam. It's dangerous. You know, I have to do this. You don't." Sam keeps walking until finally he's underwater, and he's not swimming, and the bubbles are coming up, and Frodo realizes he's not coming up, and he reaches down, grabs him, pulls him into the boat, and he's almost drowned.
Yeah.
And he says, why didn't you swim back to shore? And he finds out that Sam can't swim. He says, then why did you keep coming? Why didn't you stay there? Why did you do that? And do you remember what Sam says?
Because I made a promise, Mr. Frodo.
That I wouldn't leave you alone.
Yep.
That's the mark of Sam's character.
And that's why Sam is one of my all-time favorite characters.
And then to show how the hero's journey can take place over a long story arc. What's the thing that Sam does in the last movie? Spoiler alert.
God, he's
the most dangerous thing he does in the last movie.
The most dangerous thing he does, it would be to he carries Frodo, right?
What does he? Why does he have to carry him?
Because Frodo is basically dying. He couldn't do it anymore. He became a ring bearer at that moment.
And what nearly takes Frodo out?
The ring, right?
No,
it's the overpowering of
the creature.
Oh, the golem.
The giant spider.
Oh, the giant spider. Okay, yeah.
Yes. Sam battles a giant spider with a little sword.
Yes.
Could the Sam who went into the river in the end of the first movie have done that then?
No, not at all.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Over the course of that journey, Sam's character grows even more powerful. And not just power, but in his spirit and his heart and his determination.
And that's why Tolkien, I think Tolkien himself said, Sam is the true hero of the story.
Yeah.
And I saw the movie before I read the books. I read The Hobbit, but I had trouble. I grew up with a reading issue, and Lord of the Rings was just too difficult for me to read. And the movie made me want to read it. And I've had issues here and there. I've never actually finished the complete series yet, but it's on my bucket list to finish reading it. But Sam, watching that movie was the true hero, and I was like that. I saw it over those 3 films, but now I'm trying to read it to see the differences and what Tolkien does to.
And that's the thing, because again, Frodo has the ring, and he's in effect he's cursed. He's in a no-win situation. You've got your gallant, the fairy with the bow and arrow, and you've got the soldier, the horseman, with the sword, and you've got all these battle-hard characters. But you have a guy who basically didn't want to leave home, who's scared out of his mind, but stays to the test because he gave his word.
Yeah.
And so that's the power of developing a good character who's flawed or who has weaknesses, but somehow overcomes them. And it's character versus character, character versus self. Two levels of conflict. Perfect character development. So that's when I saw your poster.
Yeah.
That's what I thought of.
And that is from the first movie, The Fellowship of the Ring. So that is
there it is. Yeah.
That's that I well, actually that's my favorite poster they've done for all the movies. That's why I have that one. But yeah, no, that I've seen the director's cut. I don't know how many times, like it's like 12 hours long. I have done it, like taken a day off from work for my birthday, started at like 9 a.m. and I've gone straight through. I've done it, like my wife's only done it like once with me, but everybody
she's the true hero, right?
I've done it on my own. I don't know how many times, and now that it's on HBO Max, I think I've watched it like 4 times. Since I got HBO Max. And Joe Ryan just want to go to the con. He says the hero's journey. Exactly, man.
Yeah.
I used to teach when I taught at colleges more often. One of the things I taught was storytelling. And I always went over the hero's journey, and I would really discuss the monomyth and go through different things. Obviously I use Star Wars because everyone knows Star Wars. I would use things like the Odyssey and even and just try to pull any type of movie I can. But Lord of the Rings became a regular one for me in the hero's journey as well. I love it all.
What's not to love?
That's storytelling. I've always said this. I don't care. Give me a pencil, give me a puppet, give me whatever it is, a camera, an action figure, a camera. I don't care. My whole life has been about storytelling. Oh God, who would I bring up? I got my Gru right here.
Oh, okay. I got my Green Lantern.
I got a Hal over there. I got an Alan Scott over there.
It's sad here, folks. You can see what we're doing. I'm at my desk here, right? And if you really want to go wacky here, I mentioned this character earlier.
Oh wow, Speed Racer. Let's see. I got something good.
When I'm sitting here and I'm struggling with some sort of a story idea or concept or something like that, and I'll just pull up one of these things and start messing around.
Yeah, I'm just
freeze the mind.
I got something to show you. Hold on. It's on my other side of the table.
What's he gonna do now? What's he gonna do now?
Well, first off, one of my all-time favorite comic characters, Hagar the Horrible.
Yes.
But this is my favorite superhero, Dr. Fate, the superpowers line from the 80s.
Oh my goodness!
It's not my original. I got it as a gift. My original is somewhere locked away in a drawer here. Okay. Here it is. He lost his cape, and he lost a lot of paint, and you can see how. He's aged not too well.
Yes, well, obviously he's well handled, I guess is the best way to put that.
I got to say, he was definitely my favorite action figure as a kid too, and this one still has the working arms.
Yes, right. So he can serve people. He can put a tray in his hands. He can just flip that right up. Martini, sir. Yeah.
So I got a lot. My whole studio here. I'll just show you quickly because you'll probably like a couple of things. So over on this side, don't mind the light. This is my shelf.
Oh yes.
Lots and lots of action figures.
Oh, you got the old Green Lantern.
Yeah, I love Alan Scott. I'm a big Golden Age fan.
Yeah.
I got a lot of Disney over there.
That Gru?
Yeah, I just held them up, man. I love Gru. I got the whole collection of the Gru figure line. Most are behind me. I just keep Gru up here. I got my.
You got a little Chris Giarusso on the wall there too.
Every commission I get is a Dr. Fate commission. I can't show it because of the way my camera is, but I have a Fred Hembeck on the other side.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So
all right.
I got a lot of toys. I mean, I go over this way. Hold on. Just got the wire messing it up.
That was a good show.
Yeah. My Hanna-Barbera pop shelf.
Yep.
Some more figures.
Oh my goodness.
That's an original, Halloween mask of Scrooge McDuck.
Oh, gee, that's funny. That is funny.
Going up, we're going to hit a light in a moment, but going up, I got some Waldorf and Statler there, Tom and Jerry. I got a
Mario brother.
Yep, I got a Sorcerer Mickey Halloween mask up there.
Oh, jeez.
There's
Okay.
a, Gandalf. Every wall has a Lord of the Rings type of something. So
Well, thank you for sharing that with us,
yeah,
Michael.
I thought you'd enjoy. Well, I share my studio all the time.
Yeah,
People love
yeah,
love looking at it.
yeah. You just don't know what to shop for. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you get the man who has everything? Yes.
Joe Ryan says I could appreciate this. You guys should see his room. LOL. Yeah, no, it's we all have our stuff. We keep
Mm-hmm.
it around because in
Because we're
in
big
all
kids
honesty,
at heart.
yeah, and in honesty, outside of this one little doodle of Batman I have up, just because I didn't know where to put it at the time, I don't have any of my own artwork up.
Wow.
I don't want to look at my artwork. I want to look at the work that inspires me
Yeah,
to
I
create
got
art.
you. I
So
got you. I got you. That's fine. That makes perfect sense.
yeah, and after like 5 years, I don't want to look at any of my old work anymore either. It's kind of like,
It's like you can't judge
yeah,
everybody else's work, but you can
yeah.
judge your own. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. I see every mistake, even when I'm doing it. It's like, I gotta fix it. Gotta fix
You
it.
said you had another question for me?
Oh, I think we sidetracked a little too much that I forgot. But yeah. Well, let me. We were talking. There was something else I wanted to ask you about. Something that you've done. It wasn't Kids Comic Con. We talked about the book. Oh wow.
We talked about a bunch of books. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there okay? Let me go to this, so maybe it'll help me think about it. Is there anything we haven't talked about yet that you've wanted to talk about?
Well, yeah. There's Black Panther.
Okay.
Yeah. Years ago, when Don McGregor, I mentioned him earlier. Don was working at Marvel. This is, geez, God, it's 35 years ago or 40 years. I can't even remember now. The 60s, late 60s.
Yeah.
The Black Panther had been created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, and he had been making a lot of appearances in other books. So, like in the Fantastic Four and the Avengers and things like that. But he didn't really have a book of his own until they started giving him a 12-page inserts in a book called Jungle Action. So it's like 12 pages of the Black Panther story, a one shot here, one shot there. And then the rest of the book would be reprints of, like Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, or stuff like that. So at some point they decided, the powers that be decided, oh, let's let the new kid write some of these Jungle Action Black Panther stories. And they didn't really understand Don at all. They didn't get him. They didn't know what they were letting themselves in for, thank goodness, because they might not have let him do it. But he wanted to do a full-blown story of the Black Panther. He wanted to really delve into the mythology and the scientific sci-fi aspects of it and all of that, and the humanity of it. And he wanted it to be, and they did too, in Wakanda. So the whole culture, everything. So Don did so much homework, and he mapped out this major storyline. I don't know how much of it he had far in advance, but he had a pretty good idea of where he wanted to go. And he did a year-long, so a maxi series storyline called Panther's Rage. And that, by the way, is the basis for which the movie was based on. A lot of that material, Killmonger, and a lot of that other material was based on Don's story. So a few years ago, because I was around when that happened, a few years ago, Dr. Travis Langley, who's a psychologist, and has done a series of the psychology of, so it's like Daredevil, the psychology of, and Batman psychology. And so he decided he wanted to do a Black Panther psychology book. And I was asked to be a co-editor on that and to do some, yes. So that one, that came out, and I think it was 2018. 2017, 2018, the Black Panther psychology book. And we got to, it was like several other writers who also contributed to that, like Dr. Vanessa Hintz and Dr. Daniel Kim, Victor Dandridge, a number of people. And it was all looking at the Black Panther and Wakanda from its impact on us socially or psychologically, examining the characters. It was really a fun, fascinating book. And I got to interview one of the first people to do the voiceover for the Black Panther in an animated series, which was for an Avengers series. It's actually Davis, if I remember right. I'll have to get back to you on that one. But that was a great project to work on. And then 2019 in Atlanta, I was there with Don, doing a comic convention, and Jesse Holland, who's a writer and a journalist, approached me, and we had talked off and on a few times in the past, but I hadn't seen him in a while. And he approached me, and he said he was putting together an anthology of Black Panther stories, and he offered me an opportunity to write one of the short stories for it. So I got to do that, and that book came out March of this year.
Oh, wow.
So it's called The Black Panther Tales of Wakanda, and it's my piece, and 17 other African-American authors have stories in there about either the Black Panther or characters in and around Wakanda and different viewpoints of it. And it's really it's just a wonderful collection of stories. So that was really exciting, and that was really fun for me, and I had a great opportunity to be a part of that. Oh, and I should offer also that when Don was working on the Black Panther book, he worked with two different artists. One was Rich Buckler, who was on it for I think the first 3 or 4 issues, and then there was a black artist named Billy Graham, and Billy Graham worked on that and on Luke Cage, and then he got out of comics and was an actor for a number of years, and then he passed away. His granddaughter, Shauna Graham, just a few years ago, realized how much of his artwork he had left her and her father, and really began to realize how Billy hadn't been recognized for a lot of the work he did in the comic book industry. So she began to, bring that forward and get more people involved in that. So there was an exhibit of Billy Graham's art with Black Panther art and some of the other things. So I got involved in that. So I've been, for the past 3 years, immersed in the world of Wakanda in one way, shape, or form.
That's
so
pretty
I've been
cool.
enjoying that as well.
Wow, that's pretty cool stuff. Yeah, I got to be honest, I still don't remember the question. So
that's okay.
I think we sidetracked with some conversation, which is okay. It happens all the time. I think we're gonna wrap it up for tonight.
Sure.
I want to, number one, before we go, is there anything you would like to let the audience know?
Wow. Just that, it's been great being here, Michael. It's great talking to you. We haven't actually had a chance to talk in a long time.
No, not at all.
I'm glad for this, and it's always good to see you. Kids Comic Con, you mentioned it. We got a grant last December, which allowed us to work on a major project for underserved youth, Black and Latino males, throughout the month of April of this year. And some wonderful artists were involved in that, both the educational and also the artistic and creative and emotional support world. And then we also got to do a virtual Comic-Con from Africa for students here in the United States as well, all due to that grant. So we thank the Young Men's Initiative for that grant and an opportunity to do more with KCC. And that just sort of really proves that comics not only can entertain, and also they're not just an art form, but they can also be a force for education, for discovery, for creative stimulation and awareness. And like they were for you and I, they're a great method for kids to escape. And sometimes it's a good idea that they get to do that, because sometimes the world isn't painting a great picture, and it would be nice to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or feel like you got some power somehow, some way. So I want to say that, and just say anything else you want to know about me. You got my stuff going by there.
Yeah, down at the bottom, SimmonsHereandNow.com, at Simmons_Alexander, and Facebook.com.
No, that's Instagram. Instagram is Simmons.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh, okay. My bad.
No problem. Sorry.
Sorry
Well, you know what? I want to thank you for coming on. You're welcome back anytime. You have a product you wanna promote or anything, let me know. I'll set up a time I can have you back on. But it was great catching up. Great talking with you.
Same, absolutely.
And thank you for everything you do for the arts community, for the kids, everything. I know everyone appreciates it. I just want to say, got a couple of comments real quick before we take off. Joe Ryan says, great show, guys. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Joe.
And we got Juan saying, thanks for this great interview. It's always good listening to Alex.
Thank you, Juan.
And Joe McCarran says, 2 great artists. Nice guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, man. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to drop you backstage. If you want to hang out a few minutes, I'll just do my wrap up. All right.
Okay.
Thanks again
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. All right. So that was Alex Simmons, man. I mean, it was a fun interview. Make sure you check him out, SimmonsHereAndNow.com, on Instagram at Simmons_Alexander, and on Facebook, Facebook.com, Alex Simmons 2020. Next week, I got something really cool in the works. I don't want to give anything away right now, but stay tuned for the ads. You might start seeing them Friday or Saturday this weekend. I got something really, really interesting in the works. So I'll see you guys next Tuesday. You have a great rest of your day, night, wherever you're watching from, and great rest of your week. And I'll see you next week. All right. Bye, guys.